Good day, children. Today we are going to do the new lesson from the Hornbill, and this lesson is little bit tough and bigger. That's why I have divided this into 3 parts. So today we'll do the first part. In this we'll see the narrator, his wife, son and daughter. They started for the sail and how they prepared for the ship and how many days they prepared it, then who went with them. So this all we are going to learn. So in July 1976, the narrator's wife, son Jonathan, who was 6 years old, and daughter Suzanne, who was 7 years old, they set for the sail from Plymouth. So this was the place from where they set for the sail, and they had read that it was Captain James Cook who had gone sailing on the voyage 200 years before. So they wanted to imitate him and they wanted to make a history. So they decided to go for the voyage. Voyage means sea journey. For the longest time, Mary and I, means the narrator and his wife, who was 37 years old businessman, he dreamt of sailing in the wake of famous explorer, and for the past 16 years we had spent all our leisure time. So how many years they took to build the ship? 16 years. For the past 16 years they had been preparing for the sail. Our boat, Wave Walker, the name of the boat was Wave Walker, and it was 23 meters in length, and it could carry 30-ton wooden things, and it was very beautiful. It was professionally built, and we had spent months fitting it out, and they took many months to fit that ship. And it is the roughest weather we could find, and they tested it in the roughest weather. In the various kind of storms that came in the sea, they tested it. And when they were quite certain that their journey should begin, their voyage should begin, they set for the voyage. The first leg of a planned 3-year 105 means 1,55,000, 10,500 kilometers journey passed pleasantly as we sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. So their first journey was this much kilometers, 10,500 kilometers, and the journey was very well. It was pleasantly sailed, and they went from Africa to Cape Town. There, before heading east, we took on 2 crewmen. Then when they went to the Cape Town, then they took 2 crewmen. 2 crewmen, one was American, Larry Weasel, and the other one was Swiss, Herb Segler. These 2 were the crewmen who went with them in the roughest sea of the southern Indian Ocean. In the southern Indian Ocean, when they came, the weather was very rough. On our second day out of Cape Town, we began to encounter strong gales. And when they started, the second day after that in the Cape Town, the big waves, they could feel the stormy winds were coming. For the next few weeks, they blew continuously, and the winds were blowing continuously for 2 weeks. Gales did not worry me, and he was not at all worried because of these winds. But the size of the waves was alarming. The wind was there, but the waves that came with it, it was very dangerous. It went up to 15 meters high. And the mast, the mast that is put on the bamboo and the cloth is there. The mast It went up to that height. December 25 found us 3500 kilometers east of Cape Town. Then December 25 they reached 3500 kilometers of the Cape Town. Despite atrocious weather, we had a wonderful holiday complete with a Christmas tree. Though the weather was bad, but they celebrated Christmas Eve with the Christmas tree. New Year's Day saw no improvement in the weather, and when the New Year came, the weather was not at all good, it was the same. But we reasoned that it had to change soon, and it did change for the worse. And we were thinking that the weather was going to change fast, but the weather changed not for the better, but it became worse. At dawn on January 2, the waves were gigantic, and on 2nd January, the huge waves started coming like a giant. We were sailing with only a small storm jib, and were still making 8 knots. As the ship rose to the top of each wave, we could see endless, enormous sea rolling towards us. And they had only one small jib, and they had made only 8 knots. Knots means the knot that we tie in the rope, that they made only 8. And as the ship rose with the waves, they could see the endless sea rolling towards them, and the waves seemed to come rolling towards them. And the screaming of the wind spraying was painful to the ear. And the screaming, you must have experienced this during the rainy season, when a storm comes, huge winds, and it becomes dark, the light goes off, and the wind is blowing very fast, and the trees, they are making noise, and the others, all sorts of noise are coming. Then it is very dangerous, and it is very fearful. So these people, they were in the ship, and when they heard all these kinds of sound in the sea, they were very much fearful. To slow the boat down, we dropped the storm jib and lashed a heavy mooring rope in a loop across the stern. And then they dropped the storm jib, and the storm jib was dropped in so that the ship may be safe, and the rope was put across. The boat was tied across the stern. Then we double lashed everything, went through our life raft drill, attached lifelines, donned oilskins and life jackets, and waited. And then everything they tied with 2 ropes, and safely they wore the lifelines, life jackets, they put oil on their body, and they waited for the calamity to come. The first indication of impending disaster came at about 6 p.m. So in the evening at 6 p.m. it was very much disastrous condition with an ominous silence. There was complete silence. The wind dropped, it stopped, and the sky immediately grew dark. When the wind stopped blowing, the sky became dark. Then came a growing roar, and then a big roar came, and an enormous cloud towered aft of the ship, and it seemed as if a big cloud came and stopped on top of the ship. With horror, I realized that it was not a cloud, and it was, when he saw that, he was very much frightened, because it wasn't the cloud. It was a big wave that no other people had seen in their life. It appeared perfectly vertical and almost twice the height of the other waves. And the waves that were coming before, it was double the height of that, and it was vertical. and with a frightful breaking crest, and it was very dangerous and it could break the crest of the ship. The roar increased to a thunder as the stern moved up, and thundering began, and the face of the wave, and for a moment I thought we might ride over it. And at one time the narrator thought that the ship will go over it, but no. A tremendous explosion shook the deck. A big explosion took place and the deck started shaking. A torrent of green and white water broke over the ship. And then suddenly what happened? The green and white water started coming inside the ship. My head smashed into the wheel and I was aware of flying overboard and sinking below the waves. And because of the great shake, his head banged to the wheel of the ship and he started flowing. Means in the water he started flowing and he went and sank under the wave. I accepted my approaching death, and the narrator knew that his death was near. And as I was losing consciousness, I felt quite peaceful. So when he was thinking that he's dying, and this you must have experienced, that when you feel unconscious, that time your body becomes loose and you feel peaceful at mind. So here he was losing his consciousness and he was feeling peaceful. Unexpectedly, my head popped out of water. Then suddenly his head came out of water. A few meters away, Warwicker was near capsizing, her mast almost horizontal. And a few meters away from him, the ship had already tilted and its mast was horizontal on the sea. Then a wave hurtled up upright. Then a big wave came and it put the ship right, straight. My lifeline jacket taut, I grabbed the guardrails and sailed through the air into Warbecker's main boom. And then what happened? He caught hold of the rails of the ship, and as the ship became straight, he also came inside the ship. Subsequently, waves tossed me around the deck like a rag doll, and the waves, it tossed him like a rag doll. You must have seen that when the heavy winds blew, then the clothes or the trees, the way they move like this. So in the same way, this fellow was also moving with the waves. My left ribs cracked, and his left rib, it seemed to crack. His mouth was filled with blood. The blood came in his mouth because his teeth was broken. Somehow I found the wheel. Then he was able to find the wheel, lined up the stern for the next wave and hung on. And then he tried to hold the wheel in his hand and waited for the next wave to come. Water, water everywhere. And everywhere he could see the water, even in the ship. I could feel that the ship had water below, but I dared not abandon the wheel to investigate. He knew that the ship was getting filled up with water below, and he was quite afraid to leave the wheel. He thought if he leave the wheel and go and see downstairs how much water is filled in, how his family was. He was afraid, he did not want to go. Suddenly, the front hatch was thrown open and Mary appeared. The front door opened and his wife, she came out. "We are sinking." Then she screamed loudly. She shouted loudly and said, "We are sinking. Our boat is sinking." The decks were smashed. We are full of water. The deck is broken and the water is getting filled up. "Take the wheel," I shouted as I scrambled for the hatch. So he shouted to his wife that you come and hold the wheel by the time I'll go and see. Larry and Herb were pumping like madmen, and both the crewmen, they were pumping water out of the ship. Broken timbers hung at crazy angles. The wood was broken, they were hanging. The whole starboard side bulged inwards. The side of the ship came inside. It was bulging inside. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, toys, everything was there in deep water. I half swam, half crawled into the children's cabin. The children's cabin was there inside. So he swam, he crawled, he went there. Then he went and asked his children, "Are you all right?" Yes, they answered from the upper bunk. They were sitting on top, as we have the bunk in the train, the upper seat. In the same way, they were sitting on the upper bed or the seat. And Sue said, Suzanne is the daughter said, "But my head hurts a bit." She got hurt in her head because of the banging, and a big bump came over her eye. I had no time to worry about bumped heads. And this fellow, the father, he was not at all. He wanted to nurse the child, but he could not because he had to save the sinking ship. After finding a hammer, screw and canvas, I struggled back on deck, and then he picked up hammer, screws and canvas, and then again he went on the deck. With the starboard side bashed open, we were taking water with each wave that broke us over, and the side that was broken, every time the wave came, the water came inside. If I couldn't make some repairs, we would surely sink. So he said to himself that if I am not going to repair the ship, then surely we are going to die. Somehow I managed to stretch canvas. Then he, with great difficulty, he stretched the canvas, secured waterproof hatch covers across the gaping holes. Then wherever the holes were there, he tried to cover it with the canvas. Some water continued to stream below. The water was continuously coming in, but most of it was now being deflected over the side. But most of the water was getting deflected. More problem arose when our hand pump started to block up with the debris floating around the cabin, and the electric pump short circuited. And the problem arose because the pump stopped. It got blocked because of the debris, the dirt that was floating, and the short circuit. Because of that, the electric pump went off. The water level rose threateningly, and the water level also started rising. Back on deck, I found that our two spare hand pumps had been wrenched overboard, and then he found that the two hand pumps were lying in a spare, along with the forestay sail, the jib, the dinghies, and the main anchor. And then there was some sail, jib, and the main anchor was also there. Then I remembered we had another electric pump under the chart room floor. Then he realized that they had one more electric pump in the chart room. I connected it to an out pipe and was thankful to find that it worked. And he connected it to the pipe, and he was feeling very happy that it was working. The night dragged on with an endless, bitterly cold routine, and somehow or the other, the night went off. The pumping was going on, steering was going on, and he was trying to work on the radio also. We were getting no replies, and because of the bad weather, no reply was there, which was not surprising in this remote corner of the world, because they were in the far away from the main world. Sue's head had stolen alarmingly, and Sue, his daughter's head, was swollen. She had two enormous black eyes. Now she showed up a great cut on her arm, and she also had got a cut. She had got two big black eyes, means the bumping, because of that the blood clotted, and her hand has a deep cut. When I asked her why she didn't make more of her injuries. Before this, she replied, I didn't want you to worry when you were trying to save us. And when the father asked her, when you were getting so many injuries, why you didn't tell us? So she only said, I didn't want to worry you because you were trying to save us. You were trying to repair the ship. So I did not want you to worry about me. That's why I did not tell you. So this is the first part, and the other two parts I'll tell you in the next two classes. And by the time children you read this and listen to the explanation again, and many times you'll have to listen to the explanation to this lesson, because this lesson is a little bit tough, and you might be finding it boring, but it is a real incident that took place, and this kind of stories are very important for you to understand and learn about the people who have faced all these difficulties. So children, tomorrow most probably I'll be giving you the notes of the previous lesson, The Beautiful White Horse, and today that's all.